Welcome to day 64. I keep trying to get out of bed, and then my body's like, no, we can't do that right now. And then I have to lie down again. But it's not like I can actually sleep on it lying down. I just have to lie here and be in pain. That's how this rolls. Run 100 miles, use yourself all up. I will be working. I will work on a video for yesterday in a little bit and post that before you see this. So meta. Update, I made it to the couch to squeeze my legs. I've already squeezed my legs like 3 times. Every time I wake up in the middle, like when I can't sleep, I've just been like, well, let's Normatec some more. Seems to be actually helping, which is good. Very good. Now I'm gonna go work on the video. Rolling up to the grocery store after sitting in the car for 2 hours. Abnormal. It's pain. It's painful. Okay, made it back to Tucson, and now I have to make all of this make sense again so that my hobbly ass can get on the airplane tomorrow and make it to my car, which is parked very far away. Ugh. I think first stop, dirty laundry. I can't actually tell if I'm hot or cold. I can't tell if I'm hungry or nauseous. I can't tell if I want to sit down or move. So all of your typical 100-mile things. We on the treadmill. I have 4 miles planned for today. It's probably gonna have to stay at a walk because my funky left leg is definitely more sore than my right leg. I feel like if I had 2 right legs, I could run. Like my right leg feels really good. I just don't want to make the funkiness stick around, and who knows? Maybe it'll warm up after a few more miles. So there you go. Day in the life of training for further, recovering from a 100-miler. Got in my 4 miles of walking. I mean, it feels good to move. I definitely need to sort out the tension in my left leg, but not overly worried about it. Just, I will continue to be mindful of it. So yeah, up next, and why this video is extremely long, is my athlete, Lauren, who is also a coach herself, and she will introduce herself. She offered to do me an interview style about all things Coldwater Rumble, how it fits into further, and yeah, we had a great conversation. And so hopefully everything you ever wanted to know about this experience is in the next part of this video. So with that, I'm gonna go make some dinner. Enjoy. I just was like, what's my intro? And then I was like, oh, this is...
You don't need to have an intro. Hi, Internet.
Yes, hello, Internet. Okay, why don't you, before we launch into a bunch of questions, why don't you tell the other 99 people who faithfully watch my YouTube who you are?
Okay.
Because you are more than just a YouTube viewer to me.
More than just a YouTube fan. Okay, my name is Lauren Kramer. I am one of Devin's athletes. So in addition to being a fan and super interested in the way that she's training, she is my coach. So we talk about things other than YouTube and Instagram content.
And you give me good questions to ask to answer on the blog for sure.
Lots of questions. Well, because I think what you're doing is really interesting. Not just what you're doing and the training, but also like the way that you're documenting it is really unique and exceptional, especially at the elite level. So just I find it fascinating, and I think you're doing some really cool stuff, some really impressive stuff, and that's kind of what I wanted to hop on and talk about today.
Yeah,
Uh,
I appreciate that.
so let's go right there. You just did something pretty badass. So you did as a training week, you ran the Houston Marathon last Sunday, and you ran it. It was your 40th sub 3 marathon. That's huge. So you ran Houston in a 2:53 marathon. And then that was Sunday. 6 days later, you turned around and you ran the Coldwater Rumble 100 mile in Arizona. So it's a 6 day turnaround from sub 3 marathon to 100 miler. And you didn't just run it, it went pretty darn well too at the end of a massive training week. And then that was your project, was this 6 day 1 week kind of experiment to turn around from Houston to 100. But then 2 weeks before you ran Houston, you had also done this double David Goggins challenge leading into this massive training week. So like your month, maybe it's not even been a month, maybe it's been like 3 weeks, has been
Kind of
huge.
insane.
You've
Yeah.
done some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I
Dang.
guess if you think about Sunday to Saturday as my training week, that would mean that this past week was, oh God, math is so hard. 158 miles.
So what did you do in between? It sounded like you did pretty much like 8 to 10 miles every day in between the two events.
I don't remember running on Monday. I don't think I ran on Monday because I was sitting on the tarmac in Houston because it was cold. Um, so I think, let's see, Tuesday I did a double. I did like 8 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon, and then kind of just kept it around 8 and then like maybe a second run or just kind of keeping it there. But like my day before the race, usually the taper run would be like 3 or 4 miles, but I did like 7 miles. But it was supposed to be 6, but Strava did me dirty. So they're like, run through this private community that's locked up behind a gate. Yeah, so it was usually after an A race, I wouldn't like so aggressively train immediately. But yeah, the point was to not recover. Although, pro tip, when you run on pavement that's completely flat and concrete, also there's a lot of concrete, and you don't usually do that, it will hurt. So
Yeah.
Houston was like, I came off Houston and I was like, oh God, this is going to be rough.
Well, so expand on that a little bit, because you even said in your pre-race video the day before the 100 mile, that your legs felt kind of trashed. I mean, I'm picturing you like you had your legs in the pool, and you said your legs felt kind of trashed. So
Yeah, I mean, since the Goggins challenge, I think that was because of the combination on being on treadmill, so also really flat, and the shoes. I was wearing like a worn out pair of shoes, like to aid with like extra cushioning, and I got this like weird niggle in my left leg that I've talked about. Like I didn't know where it was coming from. I think it was like tightness from like maybe the hip, maybe the ankle, whatever. And that kind of did one of these, like over the couple of weeks. And like, even before Houston, I was like, the day before Houston, my legs didn't feel good. And then it was fine racing. And then having Houston be so flat and so tough on my legs, like that just doubled down the problem. And I mean, on Thursday, I saw my friend Heather's bodywork guy, who apparently is like body worker to the triathlon stars. And like he worked on my legs, and my legs felt really good after that. Like, no, I saw him Wednesday. So my run on Thursday was good. And then I sat in the car on Thursday, and my run on Friday, I was like, I was having pretty high anxiety anyways about just the whole scenario going into Coldwater. Like, it's great in theory when you're like, ooh, this will be a fun training experiment. It'll be hard. And then you're like, when you're actually having to go do the hard thing that's like maybe a next level of hardness where like it could suck the whole time, you're like, I don't know if I actually want to do that. And so I was stressed out because like my run on Friday was really bad, but I think it was on pavement. So I think that just kind of made me like, it kind of was like more like Houston. And so it didn't help with the stress.
Well, so expand on that a little bit because it was really interesting to hear you talk about your race anxiety leading up to it, and that, kind of like you said, like it's a fun idea, and then when you actually get there, not only are you about to do something really hard, but it's not like 3 hours of really hard. It's 100 miles, and when your legs feel kind of trash and you're about to go run 100 miles, that's intimidating anyway. And then you are a professional athlete. You're very well known in this community, and everybody suddenly knew that you were going to be there, and it was sort of like publicized that you were coming, and eyes were on the race, and you've got a whole nother level of maybe kind of pressure and expectation. So how did you end up managing that to sleep the night before and get yourself to the start line and over the start line and moving?
Yeah. It is interesting, like the closer I got to the race, the less my anxiety got, because like at a certain point you're just like, well, I'm stressing out about a future that I don't know what's going to happen. And like in the moment, that's not super helpful. But like by race morning, I was like, well, I finally just get to go find out. Right. So I'm not anxious then. But like the day before, I was like, maybe my alarm won't go off. Maybe I'll have a flat tire on my car. Like maybe I just go home. Right. I mean, I think that it's understandable that I had like this race anxiety has gone from like taper normal feelings of like, I am out of shape all of a sudden, like I am obviously sick, like we all have, to over the last year and a half kind of just escalated because of the setbacks that I've had. And then this was also a race in which, like you said, the theory, like when you are tired and like, oh my God, like this is actually how my legs feel. You're like, but I had kind of hoped that it wouldn't be hard. Like I was kind of hoping to be surprised at like mile 50 that I felt a little bad. And so to kind of be like, this could be suffering from the very start. It's hard to wrap your brain around that. And then to everybody be like, oh, you're going to win, you're going to crush it, like blah, blah, blah. And like, I'm like, so much for my low key, like nobody's going to notice. And on top of that, it is the first time that I've successfully finished a 100-miler when I didn't have a pacer. And I ended up, somebody from Instagram who was running the 100K, she reached out and said, like, we have a full setup. I have lots of people. You can like leave your stuff in my tent. And that made it. And then they ended up like, when they were there, like they went to a remote aid station, but like when they were there, they would, they were pros. Like, and then
That's
like,
awesome.
if they weren't going to be there, they had laid all my stuff out because I had done everything by like lap. And so that mitigated the crewing aspect. I mean, it's also a race where you get to be crewed once, like every 27 miles. So crewing this, you're kind of crew free most of the time anyways, but like the pacer aspect was very intimidating to me, like coming off this anxiety, because I'm like, I expected something to be going wrong at some point, like, or to be feeling really low and have to work through that. And I'm like, and who is going to listen to me? Like my mental performance coach actually was like, you can call me. And I was like, it's never crossed my mind to like call somebody on the phone, but I did have my phone and I was like, well, if I need to phone a friend, I will phone a friend.
That's awesome. Well, okay, so let's let's talk about the race itself a little bit. Tell us about the course. This isn't a new race, but it was they redesigned the course a little bit. So from what I saw online, it's like 2 little loops and 3 big loops. Is that how it was set
Yeah.
up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was
So it
the
was,
terrain like?
I mean, most people like use Javelina as a comparison. Apparently, this race has been called the evil stepsister of Javelina. So previously, the course was much more technical and had a lot more washes, like kind of like things like this, where you just like lose
Mm-hmm.
your rhythm. I obviously can't compare the two because I haven't done the previous course, but this still had that, but it was just less. So the first 2 loops, it was like 9.6 miles, and that was decently runnable. It'd be like you're cruising along and all of a sudden you're like running through a wash and you're like, and now I am running through sand, literally. And those ones went by really quickly because they had, let me see, 5 mile, 10 mile, 40K, 60K, 100K, and 100 mile. So there's 6
Mm-hmm.
races going on, and they all went off between like 7 a.m. and 8:30. And so those first 2 loops, you're just like suddenly, like after we were like through our first loop, suddenly you just had people everywhere, and it like gave you something to think about, right? To just be like, okay, now I have to navigate people and the terrain. But those loops were pretty runnable. They had a couple little kickers, like decent climbs, but nothing like too insane. The thing about this course is that there's a lot of like, I was actually contemplating this as I was doing it. I was like, is there any downhill? I'm like, I don't know how they're making it all uphill, but it feels like it's all uphill. Like there was no, for how long, like, so on the first loop, you kind of run up and then do this big climb, and then you can kind of get the sense of like, I'm going up, I do this big climb, and then I'm going back down. And then the big loops, I feel like you start out at headquarters and you run 9 miles till the next aid station, which is so long. Feels so long. And like that part like just felt like it was like almost 5 miles of all uphill, and like there's no other point in the course where you're like, oh, now I get 5 miles of downhill. Like so that section, there were a lot of like, it seemed more like mountain bike trails, where like when it got dark, you're kind of like, when you turn around and look, you're like, is somebody coming? And if they're coming, are they like 5 miles behind me, or are they like half a mile, right? Like you can't tell because of the way the trail, like if you look at the Strava map, it's like, and then you go down this way and then you come back up this way. The big loop, the climb, like this has a million times more rocks than Javelina. At Javelina,
Mm.
I once found a rock to fall on, and obliterated my knee. It's a lot of rocks. It's not necessarily it's not like East Coast rocks, right? Like it's not rocks where you're like rock hopping, right? Like it's just that there is more, you have to pay attention to your feet. There's still some of those really annoying washes where you like go steep downhill over some rocks, just like into some sand, and then have to run back out of it. And then after you leave the like mile 9 aid station on the big loop, you run through like, there was at least a quarter mile, probably more, of like sand, like okay, like I'm on the beach and I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. So the thing about the course, one of the things that makes it hard is like the distance between the aid stations on that loop, because it's 9 miles, 6.7 or something, maybe 6.9 to the next one, then 4.7, and then 6.7, right? Adds up to 27 somehow. But like that, those do not come quickly later in the race, that's for sure, right?
Yeah. Okay, so how did your feet fare with all of that running through sand? Like, do you wear gaiters, or do you just let it be what it is when you're running through that kind of terrain?
I was wearing compression sleeves, and so I kind of did like even though those are too short for my calves, there was kind of a gap, but I kind of try to make it cover like so that nothing can get into my sock. I didn't actually have any problem getting sand in my shoes. That was a big question for me, not knowing what the terrain was like. Like I took a really big gamble on the shoes that I wore because I was like, if this is if this is significantly more technical than I think it's going to be, I'm going to be really screwed because I was wearing the Nike Ultrafly. And like, if you want to die on technical terrain, wear those.
Good to know.
They are I think I had told you back in October I wore them for that local 50K and like almost like tore my hamstring because they have their grip. I don't know how they possibly made a shoe that is so bad at anything but a straight line.
It's a trail shoe. It's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be a trail shoe.
It is a great javelina shoe.
Not for rocks.
Yeah, not for rocks or turns. No turning. You're not allowed to turn.
Or sand.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you got to come through. So the crew station, you got to come through 4 times before the finish. Yeah. Did you actually stop and like resupply and pick stuff up every time that you came through?
Yeah, so my strategy, because I didn't know if I was keeping my stuff, you know, I didn't know if they were going to crew me or if I was self-crewing. And so to make it as expeditious as possible, I brought basically there's 5 loops. So I had 4 different setups. So I only kept the same pack once. So I started out with a handheld and that was it because it's 9 miles, you know, I don't need a pack. And then I switched to Ultraspire has like a really small pack that's more meant for the water bottles are smaller and everything. And so I switched to that on the second loop. And I basically had a bag for each loop and it was like, I had everything I needed in there for that loop. Whether it's gels and like, I tried to make sure that it was like already packed so that I could just pick it up and go. And yeah, I basically just stuck to that. That was my plan. I didn't use anything different. So I ended up using, basically 2 different packs. Unfortunately, the pack that I used for the majority of the loops, so basically for 54 miles, severely bruised my ribs. Because the bottles, they're not hard bottles, but it's really low. And like my rib cage is really bony. And so I literally have just bruises like that on my ribs. And that was unpleasant. So
cool. Oh
yeah.
So you had talked a little bit about in maybe a normal 100-mile effort, you are typically using gels as your main source of fuel. But that for this one, I think probably both because you're training for a 6-day event. This wasn't your 100-mile race. But then also to kind of lighten your mood a little bit and have some fun with it, you were using some different stuff. So what did you end up actually eating and taking in addition to your normal like gels and stuff like that?
Best laid plans. I had that whole bag of food. I was all excited. And then nope. No, I basically, I don't know if it's because I was like more tired or just like, because I'm tired, the effort is just that much more. But like, I didn't want to add in, like, I was basically like, I can tolerate gels and I was taking in gnarly. That's what I had in my bottles and what they had on course. And it was working. And like, the inside of my mouth hurts from like sugar. And I like later on, I started on the last 2 loops, I had a Red Bull to start. And so then I was like at each aid station, like getting a little bit of soda in that or whatever. But like, it just seemed like what I was tolerating. And like, I'd come into headquarters and be like, do I want to take some gummy worms with me? And I'd be like, no, I do not. Like, I don't want to chew. no, I'm good. So, yeah.
So I
Now
wondered that.
I have a bag full of delicious food.
When I saw the peanut butter pretzels that you love so much, and I'm picturing mile 80, mile 90, something hard and crunchy, and oh boy,
Mm.
good luck, Devin.
No, I ate those on the drive back to Tucson today, so
Oh
those
yeah,
have been
there you go.
consumed. Yeah.
So how in preparing then for this 6-day event, let's specifically in terms of like nutrition, hydration, that sort of thing, what did you learn or what could you maybe apply forward from this event to the 6-day?
Yeah, it's hard to know if it was the effort, like, right, if my effort was too high, and obviously that means that at Further I have to back off my effort, but like Further is not going to have 10,000 feet of climbing in 100 miles like this did. So like, and the, running on trails harder, running in sand is harder, all these things. I definitely was thinking about that out there, just like I can't get away with that in the long term, because there was a very much like a little bit of YOLO as like on the last loop, where I'm like, I am literally just trying to take in enough to like not, like, I just want to make it to the finish line. And I did have an epic bonk, which I don't really know how it's possible that I bonked when I did, because I had just drank a Red Bull like 30 minutes before, which has plenty of calories, but like I bonked so hard on the fourth loop, like my soul left my body.
So what did you do to get out of that? Because the next video that you shot was you were on the other side of it.
Yeah. So I drank, because I was decently close to the next aid station, like the mile 9 aid station on that loop. I drank like almost my entire flask of gnarly, and then I took a gel, and like just kind of, it was really weird. It was like bam, and then I took all that like very quickly, and then like within 3 minutes I was fine, and I was like, that could have been, all I could do is contemplate like how bad that the rest of the race was going to feel if that had persisted, because like I don't think I've bonked that hard and that like swiftly ever. Like that was bad. But I do think that this plan is just not sustainable for Further, right? And like,
yeah,
I mean, I'm not going to eat. Can you imagine eating gels for 6 days? And I think I think that basically my thinking was, I kind of did go into race mode yesterday, where it was like, I am training, but I'm also kind of want to, I feel good. I want to keep running. I don't want to like stop and like interrupt my flow to be like, let's eat some chips and have some protein. I didn't have anything with protein, but like at Further, I know that I'm going to have a deliberate plan on how to eat and have that dialed based on what I'm going to need for the long term. And like some of that just means that I have to have like take walking breaks, or like take a time to eat a full meal and digest, and like time that stuff so that I can actually get in enough calories, not just for, because in a 100-miler, you're like, screw it, I'll eat a hamburger when I'm done. Like, I don't, like, you're not worried
right.
about like the weight you lose, or you're like, whatever, you're going to be in a loss. But like in Further, you can't do that, right? Like multi-day events, you cannot hemorrhage that much energy, right? Like,
Right.
yes, we have enough energy in our body to run a million marathons or whatever, but like if you start like muscle wasting and stuff, like that's the problem, and you want to stay really far away from that, because that's a great way to end your race early.
Yeah, well, and long-term effects of that too.
Yeah.
So what do you do, like when you're in that situation, you're starting to bonk and you recognize that, what does your mental state look like in that point? Like, what's your self-talk sound like when you're in a tough spot like that?
I mean, I have found on a day like yesterday, a good day, it's just like problem solution, right? Like I don't, like same thing happened at Javelina, where like at Javelina in 2022, my first gel I threw up, like, and I was like, that could be interesting, right? Like, it's more about like curiosity versus like freaking out on less than stellar days. It's like, your brain is like, let's make meaning out of this, right? And I'm like, I was pretty committed after feeling so stressed out the days before the race to like just stay calm. And so I was like, well, that's interesting. And like, I just immediately went to solution. Like, if you're bonking, what do you do? Take in some calories. And then I was like, and if it's not calories, then what else could I possibly be behind on? And I was like, well, it might be electrolytes, because we had, God bless our souls, it was overcast the whole day, and it was supposed to be like extremely hot yesterday, but the overcast made it like, it was still warm, but like we had a crazy breeze. It didn't feel that hot. So I was like, that was my next step. It's like, if these calories don't help, it's take electrolytes. And like, that was kind of my process throughout the day, when like more minor, when I'd be like, why do I suddenly feel like a little weird in this way or whatever? I'd be like, okay, what did I do that preceded this? And like, what do I do now, and what do I try, right? If I've just eaten and drank, then it's like, okay, maybe it's electrolytes or whatever.
Okay, so sort of expanding upon that, maybe in a different sense, you had said before you went into this race that you, in any 100-mile that you have lined up for and didn't have a pacer, you have never finished before. So what did you do when you got to that point? I'm going to guess it's probably like mile 60, 70 when you would usually pull a pacer in. What did you do when you got to that point and you knew, okay, I'm going out for this last section on my own? What was your process like there?
I mean, I think in previous races that I didn't have a pacer lined up, it like like big things came up. Like, I had pleurisy, right? Like, things like that. I was having a lupus flare. Like, so in this case, as I was getting deeper into those miles, I just was like, I'm fine, right? Like, I am fine. I don't need someone right now. Like, it wasn't part of my strategy. So going into a race with a pacer, the way I like chunk up a race is going to be like, I'm going to run this part in silence. I'm going to listen to music, and then I'm going to have a pacer. And this was, I'm going to run in silence. I'm going to run in basically a rave for as long as possible, and like just listen to my music and like have that be my companion. I will say it was a little rough when not even halfway, like 11 miles into the final loop, my headphones died. And then I was like, it is dark. I am by myself.
Well, and you really were by yourself. You were second overall at this point.
Yeah.
So, like, I would imagine there's not that many people out there anymore doing the 100-mile period, plus at the front of the race.
Well, and it was interesting because at Javelina, because the loops are a lot smaller and it's a lot more people, at Javelina, when you go out for those last laps, you're just like people everywhere. And so for this, I kind of expected that there would be more people like throughout the loop. But it was interesting because just the way it ended up working is that there were just really long stretches. I was lapping people. And so like there were really long stretches where I would see no one, right? And you can't see the person ahead of you. You can't see anybody behind you. So you could go like, other than like an aid station, without seeing anybody for like 10 miles. And so that definitely, being alone, I was like, as soon as I got the little like, please charge in my headphones, and I was like, oh God. I thought it was gonna be my phone that died, but it wasn't. And I basically just told myself, like, don't freak out. Like, you don't have an option. Like, you don't have a pacer, right? Like, freaking out about having to run in silence is probably not going to be that helpful.
So what then do you talk about when it is silence and it's dark and you're on your own? What What's going through? Are you narrating your run as you finish it up?
Well, thankfully I had been listening to the same playlist over and over and over again. So then I could just sing those songs to myself, you know, like silent, very silent rave. Actually, my mental performance coach had gave me a strategy that helped. I didn't necessarily feel like I had to, like, it helped get me, like, if I started having any thoughts being like, God damn it, where's the aid station? She had told me that, like, just because, like, people can run with you who aren't there, right? Like, you can bring people close to you, you can imagine them running with you. And so at different points, I would just imagine different people running with me and being like, and if I needed to, I would like, like, I don't know why, but like 4 of my further teammates, I just started saying their names like on repeat, like, because they each mean something to me, or like I was thinking about like what they've accomplished to get ready for a 6-day or like that kind of thing. And so I just would like say their names over and over again and like bring in that energy versus, you know, focusing on the fact that I'm all alone and I would like to be done running.
That's very cool. I like that strategy. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so shifting gears, you finished the race successfully. First female, second overall, a new course record. Even though it's a new course, it still was like a 2.5-hour course record from the old course.
Yeah.
How is your recovery feeling so far? I mean, okay, it's Sunday afternoon. So like 24 hours ago, you were probably at like mile 50 or so, I don't know, somewhere around there. But so far, how is your recovery feeling compared to like if this were your A race 100 and you had just, you know, thrown yourself down on the course?
I mean, I definitely feel the initial like getting home, like the the post race was like to a T, like so typically me, like I'm fine, I'm sitting there talking to Jeff, and then like I go to talk to the women I'm crewing, and like I'm getting my stuff, and all of a sudden I just like stopped and I was like, I need to sit down right now, like, because like I just go from like totally fine to like death drop, like I'm gonna pass out kind of thing. And so I drove myself home, and like I was trying to, like, you know, I'm hobbling, I'm trying to carry this big ass duffel bag of all my stuff, and like I make myself
Pros, they're just like us.
exactly. And like I make myself some waffle fries, and like I take a shower, and then I take the waffle fries out of the oven, and I'm like, I need to lie down like right this second, right? Like, and the waffle fries are over there, and I'm just like, you know, like that, and like trying to sleep. Like I just got in bed and I'd be like, I can't, how do I'm like, am I tired, or did I drink, like, am I like, is my brain about to explode from caffeine? So like I basically just tossed and turned a bunch in bed. So like initially when I got up, I was like, it was the same as an A race where you're like the worst sleep you've ever had, everything hurts and you're dying. But I think because the intent is to continue to move and like try to get my body like able to continue, like theoretically I would be running, do it again today, right? So I'm actually scheduled to do 4 miles, which apparently I'm probably going to do on Heather's treadmill later because it's raining.
That was one of my questions. Did you run today?
I don't think it's going to be a run. I think it's going to be like movement. I will probably walk. I did find that like when I have a normal A race, you're like, you know, sail off into the sunset. Like you're not like actively like I've Normatec'd like 4 times today. I have my Normatec Go, and I'm like, you know, like our strength coach through the Canadian Sports Institute had given us a list of like some movement things to help us like during further. And so like I'm like lying in bed and I'm like, okay, ankle circles, I was making fun of them yesterday, but here we are doing them. Like, you know, to kind of actually do more active recovery, because usually I'll just be like, I don't need to do that, but for this I'm trying to cultivate that in a different way. So I think it doesn't necessarily like make you feel that much better or different, but I can tell that the movement helped. So like before I got in the car to drive here, I was actually feeling like, okay, like I could get away. I could fake a normal walk. And then when I got out of the car at Whole Foods, I was like, nope, can't
You're
do it.
just gonna walk like a cowboy.
Yes,
You fit right in Arizona. You're
exactly.
fine. So, one of the questions that you had gotten on YouTube was, did you find that you were more depleted than you would expect to be 100 miles deep into the further project?
Yes. Like I definitely like initially when I crossed the finish line, I was like saying to some of the women that helped me, I was like, dear God, this does not make me feel like, oh God, oh God. Well, you know, because like, I think it's because the framing is different, right? Like I made choices because I knew I got to stop,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I mean, I talked about in my random videos that I took yesterday where like, I'm like trying to slow down, but like, it's trying to slow down, but like, you're still like, the effort is still higher than it will be on most of the days. And so I definitely think that like what we were talking about earlier with the calories of like, YOLO, I'll be done. I don't care. Like, I think some of those things meant that I just finished this in a way where like my coach had been like, leave something in the tank so that you can get up tomorrow and do 4 miles. And I was like, what tank? Do I have an auxiliary tank that I somewhere else?
You're
So
building one.
yes, yeah, exactly. So I think that that's what I put myself into this position. And so now I can use that as information. I also think that this same, if you think about the pace I'm going to try to run during further, right? Like a 16-hour 100 is wildly fast, right? Like for a 6-day. So my first day might be in this ballpark, right? But it's on easier terrain, that kind of thing. So theoretically, it shouldn't take as much out of me, but like this gave me good information of like, okay, when you push this much and don't take those breaks and don't add in those calories and, you know, do the things for the long term, you will, you know, burn too many matches. And I don't want to do that.
Do you think there's a component there too, just in your mental expectation that your brain knows there's a 100-mile finish line, but they always say, like, if the finish line had been 5 more miles down the road, you could get there, 10 more
Yeah.
miles down the road, you could get there. But wherever the finish line is, once you've crossed it, your body says,
Yeah.
okay, that's it, we're done. So if your expectation is we're going to get up, go again, get up, go again, does that, make it different?
I do think I think that's what I learned through the Goggins challenge is that when you just know that you have to keep going, like, and do it again and do it again and do it again, like the expectation does change it. And like, when you are that committed to seeing it through as I was and like doing it in the way that I did, you just do what it takes to do it. Right. Like I switched that, like, I don't know, my brain works really well with like a plan like that. So with further, the way that I'm like thinking about planning my days is to have like an artificial finish line, but like that just simply means like now you're shifting into rest mode, but you still know you have to go again. You're not like racing to the finish line and like, sprinting into bed and then hoping for the best. Like each thing is its own block. And so I do think that will make a big difference in that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I have 2 other questions. One is from your podcast, for the Women of Distance podcast. You used to ask people, are you a post-race pizza or post-race burger kind of person? And is it different for today, with the way that you're recovering, training forward? And
I mean, apparently it's post-race waffle fries, but I'm usually, so my initial meal that I have is usually like tater tots or waffle fries or something simple that you're like I could eat this in any occasion. My first like real meal, I usually go with burger, and I'm really sad that I had no appetite earlier, and then I was like on the road at a weird time because they had In-N-Out here, and I haven't had an In-N-Out burger. They have them in Phoenix. They don't have them here, right? So I couldn't get an In-N-Out burger because I was like, I will vomit. So I am having tacos for dinner, but ground bison tacos. So yeah.
Okay. Third
So I
category.
ruined it all because I'm neither.
Neither.
Neither. But like if I don't have the like if I was to go out to a restaurant after a race, if I was traveling and with people, I would get a burger, 100%.
So my last question, before the race, you had mentioned that you have one more potential racing opportunity on your calendar between now and the Further project, and that you were kind of waiting to see how this one went before you made a decision on it. It's probably too early to ask for a real decision, but you had a great day out there. What are your thoughts on the Black Canyon 100K?
Yeah, I mean, Black Canyon, I mean, it's a risk, obviously, since I'm supposed to continue to train this week, and like that's gonna hamper my recovery. And you know, I had really like I think that facing my anxiety, like previous anxiety, and like work, like developing tools to fix that, and like I mean, I like called in, I called in all the big guns. I was like, Courtney DeWalter, can I? How do I stop being myself and be you? And she was like, you be you, you'll be fine. And I'm like, no, but like, can I borrow your vibe so that I can stop freaking out? And like, I talked to Heather, and I, you know, like I got a lot of people to hype me up. And this was I mean, my self-consciousness was high because of the way that they talked about the race. But don't you think the most competitive 100K that's like death match for golden tickets is also going to be that? So I can view it two ways. Like that would be a really great opportunity for me to really just have my focus on my own thing and like practice being like, let's go into this super crazy environment that's like super pressure, which I will be in at Western States, and like run my own race anyways, even if that means I'm running a race that's not competitive. Like my split from yesterday would like still put me in like the top 5.
Yeah.
And this was uphill, not downhill. But that it's like, do I want to use it as a tool for that? Or is it going to be too hard of an effort? Because that'll only be 3 weeks out from Further. And that's my concern, is just, even if I'm like, I'm gonna hold back, like, am I? Do you think I'm gonna be like, let's pump the brakes? If I'm like leading, I'm gonna take a half an hour sit down and have a snack. Like, no, obviously, right? So I'll have to talk to my coach and just see. Like, I like the idea of doing Black Canyon, and I want some redemption there, because that's the only race that I've ever had an in-race anxiety attack, like, or full-on panic attack. Like, I had never had a panic attack, and then 2022 I had, like, it was insane. And I ended up rallying back from that, like, fell super far back. Thankfully, another runner, like, who has panic attacks in races, like, shepherded me through this, and I make it to mile 40 something, or what Black Canyon City is. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to rally super hard. And I rally all the way back through the field, like, I don't know, probably to 5th place. And then I took the worst fall I have ever taken in a race, like, so bad. I was going downhill, and I caught a toe on a rock, and I thought I had, like, ripped my, like, the skin off my pinky. So I just stood up. All right, it was like, I was like, nope, we're not going to look at that. But I couldn't get off the ground because my calf cramped so bad that, like, I could not stand up. I thought I was going to have to sit there until the next person came. And that was just, like, you get one hard rally, not two. And, like, my calf just stayed really fucked up. So I dropped out at the next aid station. But, like, So I want redemption on that course, but like now is not necessarily the time. So there's it's a still TBD. Like also how I feel today. Like I don't know. I could recover great, and it could be a great idea. Like I don't know. I just want to make sure that it's serving everything in this block is trying to serve the ultimate goal of further. And like now that I had a successful like running this, like really scratched that itch to have like a confidence booster leading into this. So it's like that also makes Black Canyon almost like more like that's a definite like negative to be like, now I'm going to gamble that confidence, right? Like I could
Yeah.
have a super rough day and 3 weeks out and be like, what am I doing? So
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll see.
Take what you just did and continue to work on it, continue to craft it, and get toward that 6-day goal. When you have a really big year, I mean, this 6-day project is a huge thing, but that's the beginning of your year. then you have the comrades and the Grand Slam to follow.
Yeah.
So you've got plenty of stuff on your calendar.
Yeah. And then in October, I'm just retiring from the sport completely. Well, I'm not. I have a different plan, but I'm probably going to shift gears to more of like a marathon focus. Because when I was at Houston, like it's really weird to like run that random time on like very not specific training. And like I've always wanted to know what I could do if I actually tried in the marathon. And so I've always undermined that because of like trying to like maintain both things. Like I've never really gone all in on marathoning because I'm like, I'm never going to be a great marathoner. Like, so it's always been very personal, but like I'm a professional ultra runner, right? Like, so it's hard to balance those things, but I'm older now and I can do whatever the fuck I want. And like, I don't know, like my contract with Lululemon is through the end of the year. I don't know if they're going to resign me or not. Like I'm kind of in the, I can do whatever I want stage. So I have started looking at like, once I get through the Grand Slam, we do a huge shift in the other direction. And then like kind of plan a long-term attack on this marathon goal that doesn't include 100 milers as part of the lead up.
I mean, I think that's part of what makes you very skilled at ultra running, though, is you are a really great marathoner. And I think when you look at other professional ultra runners, they can't all run a marathon the way that you do. And I think that translates to your success in the ultra marathons also. But
I mean, Jeff Browning yesterday was like, I knew you were coming for me. He was like, I was running so scared. Like, cause people respect the fact that I have like legitimate, like compared to somebody who's a 100-mile specialist, like I have legitimate speed. I mean, and like, it's really funny. Last year when I was training for Western States with Courtney DeWalter, I would be like, I don't know, like, and she'd be like, whatever, 244. Like I had just run a 244. And like to her, she's just like, how can you not think that you can like run this super hard? Like, she's like, we were joking that we were going to have a sprint off at the track. Like wouldn't that be epic if we like battled it out and she's like, but you need to give me a half-mile head start. Like I need to be a half-mile ahead of you when we get to the track because you'll catch me. And like, you know, I appreciate that is how I'm viewed. Like I don't always, ultra running doesn't necessarily always like respect like marathoning and roads and stuff. So it's nice that at least my competitors do understand the value of what I do and like the fact that I have that speed.
Yeah, well, so not only are you're a professional ultra runner by trade, but how many Olympic trials have you already run in the marathon?
I've done 2. I didn't do 2016 because I didn't want to run in LA, like in an inferno. So yeah.
I don't know of any other ultra marathoners that are 100-mile specialists like you are that have been to the Olympic trials period, let alone twice. I mean, that's unique.
Yeah.
So, and what you're doing is unique. I mean, thanks again for sitting down to talk to me about all of this. It's the process that you're going through to train for a 6-day event is interesting and unique in and of itself. Like there's just not a lot out there about training for that kind of a project, let alone at the elite level. I mean, you are letting us in every single day to what you're doing and what you're eating and how you're training and what you're thinking. Like that's incredible. And I think it's very cool how much you're sharing, because the sport itself is growing, but as the sport is growing, the distances are growing too. And there's just not a lot out there for this multi-day stuff. So to share as much as you are at the level that you are doing this is just really, really cool and really interesting to follow.
And I mean, that's in part because like when I went to be like, dear Google, how does I 6-day? Like it was like, I'm sorry.
People don't do that.
I don't even like to drive that far, said Google. You know, so like that's part of it is I want to create a resource. Like I'm not trying to become a YouTuber. I mean, it's enough work to do this for whatever. It's going to be like 100 days total. And like there are, you know, days where I'm like, okay, I'm going to put the most boring thing on the internet. But, you know, like it's all part, like it makes sense as a whole. And so like, I'm glad that people can look at this and, you know, be like, oh, like this strategy or like this thought process, or like, as we get closer, I'll start talking about like my plans and how I'm actually, once I figure all those things out, you know, like how you build a plan for this kind of thing. And like you said, it applies to multi-day, it applies to 200, and now we have a 300-mile race in existence.
See, that's what I mean. As the sport grows and the distances are growing, it's the 100 is the new 50, 50 is the new marathon. Like it's just, we're going further and further. Ha, no pun intended. So this is just really cool. And even the mundane days, like, I mean, I think a lot of the content that you see out there is the flashy stuff, like the big training weekend, the training camp, the cool stuff that people are doing. And that's what this conversation is about, because you just did a cool thing. But the everyday blogging, that's just, this is just a regular training day. It's not flashy. It is boring, but this is part of the process. It's cool.
And it's what it takes, because like, that's the reality is I think people get the idea that like, oh, I just have to do this like one crazy session and then I'll be prepared. And it's like, no, you have to, you know, eat your plain oatmeal every day and like just like you're building a foundation so you can do those epic workouts. But like people don't want to post that because it's not sexy. It's just like running slow. People want to put their fast pace on Strava and you're like, go run slow. Like, who cares?
Well, thank you for all that you're sharing and all that you are putting out there. It's very cool to follow. It's great content for those of us who are in the dead of winter and stuck on the treadmill way too many days and too many miles. It's really fun to watch and fun to follow. So.
Yeah, I'm just sorry you get robbed. I mean, you don't get robbed. You get robbed of watching this on YouTube later because, you know, you've got to experience it. But
I don't know. We're at like 55 minutes right now. I mean, this could be a great. I might watch it again anyway.
Yeah. PR for length of vlog.
Yes. All right. Cool. Well, I'm not going to keep you on the phone all night. You have a run to go do, or a movement of some kind.
A joggle, yeah.
Hobby jog.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Thanks for chatting with me, Devin.
Thank you.